I think one of the things I like the most about In the Land of Leadale is how, when you compare, especially my feelings with last week's episode in terms of how it teases a cliffhanger, it basically was being set up as we would be experiencing a player with necromancy, summoning zombies in that realm. And that could be a pretty dark plot line because, an actual real person summoning the dead using blood magic, that's a pretty twisted storyline if it's an actual reality and not simply a video game that you're playing for leisurely fun. And almost immediately, they don't go that direction. Instead, we have a quest, a storyline that would probably be pretty difficult for most players if they weren't over-leveled. But like in Elden Ring fashion, it's like going back to the starting area and playing against bosses that are designed to kick your ass at the beginning of the game. But if you go back there at level 100 plus, you're going to be the one stomping within 1 to 2 shots. And it was really cool to see how my initial impressions of what this episode was going to be was immediately flipped on its head. It subverted the expectations and instead basically just delivered a gamer's dream. Because the way this show operates and the fundamentals that it's based upon, you can tell within so many episodes that it's written by someone who either loves video games or had a big video game nerd next to them basically telling them how to write things to feel realistic. I think some of the best examples is one, the character who has been teased for a while. We finally get kind of fully introduced towards Kayna, which is this female character who very much seemed to be a male. So the idea that it was an original player from the world was a guy playing a female in a video game. Something that's pretty common for both males and females alike, even though there's a lot of people who will just play like, oh, I'm a girl, so I'll play as a girl, I'm a guy, I'll play as a guy. There's a ton of people who will be like, no, I want to play as a female. I'm one of those people. I'd much rather look at a female character model for 100 hours plus than a male character model. And there's that kind of common thought process among many gamers. And the idea that while we're playing a video game and wanting to reverse what we actually are, the idea of like what happens if you get teleported and transported into that body, would you feel comfortable with it or would it be a little awkward for you? And for him, it's pretty awkward. He's doing his best to appear more feminine, but ultimately comes across as very awkward because through and through, he is a guy and wants to be a guy, but now is trapped in that body. I thought that was a nice little touch because on surface, I mean, if you were to ask most video game players, do you have any issues playing as the opposite gender or anything like that? They're going to say no. But the idea of like, would you want to change your gender sort of a thing within like this game if it became your reality? It'd be a very interesting topic for a lot of people to kind of answer. And I like how they explored it in a very casual, funny way without going overboard or anything like that. Another thing I really liked is the quest itself. I mean, that quest didn't last long. The pirate ship, there's skeletons, so there's a big boss, and Kayna and the other person they take care of the minions and we one-shot the boss. That might, on paper, seem a little anticlimactic. Damn, they're setting up this big kind of like undead questing, and no, instead it's just like they make the joke themselves. Like, yeah, that was rather easy, but what do you expect? We're way too over-leveled for this quest. They very much understand what makes video games, and the fact that they're through and through making this feel like reality first and foremost, but reminding us what this was based off to begin with from stats and things like that, and just casual remarks the players themselves say. I love the idea of the max shut-in joke because, for one, Kayna was hooked up to life support. It's no surprise that she has that many hours played in this game, but the idea that you get these bells like once every 10,000 hours, and you either get a maid or a butler, but she has both because she was basically such a shut-in. But ultimately, we also know the more emotional reason behind that shut-in joke, which is she literally couldn't move from her bed. It makes complete sense that she was playing that game for so long, when it really was her only act of kind of feeling alive. But just to see those types of things remaining relevant, that's what makes the show so great for me, because I am a huge gamer, and I love the fact that if you enjoy video games, you get so much more out of the show than if you're just watching it as a pure fantasy show and you don't really understand a lot about video games. It still can work in that department, but you definitely get an extra level of enjoyment, I find, when you see the references and you see someone writing a story understanding how gamer minds think, and I really enjoy that. But it was interesting to see how we actually, instead of going like with this necromancy plotline or anything, instead, she adopts a child. And I thought that was interesting because immediately when I saw this little girl, I thought to myself, if she ends up taking care of her, Mai-Mai especially is going to be very, very jealous. We already know how Scargo and the others are acting, but the idea of her maybe like pampering a little girl when Mai-Mai herself wants that pampering, probably especially because of the missed years of not being able to be taken care of by Kayna, I think will be very, very hectic, chaotic, probably wholesome, But I love the idea that because this is her world, she very much is looking at this as a real little girl who needs a family, rather than just an NPC who she can just turn her brain off and just walk away and doesn't care. That's what's so great about this show, is how they definitely are exploring it in natural ways, and while I wish we did maybe have like one conversation, like the one thing I think I'm missing from this show as it stands is a conversation between any of the 4 players that she now is in contact with, about maybe just revealing her feelings about like, hey, did you all die too? Or, you know, the idea of like, how did you, like, what were you thinking? What were you saying when you got transported here? We are missing, in my opinion, that one conversation that shows that Kayna, you know, despite accepting this is her reality, she does have questions about how they came here from their own original world. I wish we did have that conversation, but minus that one little nitpick, which I still think there's time for that to be brought up, and if not, maybe in a season 2 potentially. Besides that though, I love how Kayna responds to this world. She is flirty, she is violent. I mean, one of the first lines in this episode is her contemplating, should I just burn down this entire village? To then realizing, oh yeah, but if there's actually people here, I don't want to hurt them. It is so ridiculous, so insane, but it's thought out as if, okay, what if one of our favorite video games became our reality? How would that get turned on its head? Especially for an MMO that you're playing, which is already a big time sink, and now you log in and you have all of these insane summons. You have a giant water dragon that you're going downtown to basically activate the next tower that turns out to be a Konosuba level toad, which honestly I'm loving the reaction there, because even though I knew it wasn't going to be like the toad was going to swallow her or anything, I love the idea that she's not only like concerned about taking the ring because what if it's slimy, what if it's disgusting, but also just out of every guardian spirit that she's met, this is the weirdest one that she wants to run away from quickest. Those are the types of things that are just so damn good. And I especially love the moments where you have, like last week, right? You know, the idea of the centaur getting killed. In my opinion, it was, he's going to come back. Her response just felt like it wasn't life or death forever. It's a video game mechanic, being able to summon a spirit. Even if it's down for the count for a while, it should be able to come back. And then they start directing it as if she's like paying tribute, like he's actually dead. And I'm like, wait, are you actually telling me that you killed off this character and she was that calm to begin with, and then we realize that it's only like, you know, a week's time, 10 days time before it can come back, and she was just going a little too over dramatic there, and I really enjoyed that bait and switch for a joke. The show's awesome though. We have now 2 episodes left before we have to say goodbye, hopefully just for a time, and someday we'll get a season 2. But as it stands, CAYNA'S adventure, in terms of just being a wholesome slice of life surrounded by all these video game mechanics and world mechanics, has just really brought a grin to my face, and it really hits that sweet spot that only a few shows have ever really managed. The last one really that hit it out of the park in terms of like kind of twisting a video game world on its head was Bofuri for me, so it's nice to have another one in the books that I can recommend to people looking for a show such as this one. But thoughts, if you have any, on this very incredible episode, in my opinion, of In the Land of Leadale. What do you hope to see with the last couple of episodes? Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.